Hi and welcome to our look at the Razer Sabertooth Xbox 360 controller. This is the follow-up to the Razer Onza, and the box, as you can see here, follows the standard Razer style design, so we get a good view of the controller on the front. It's licensed for Xbox 360, and then various different gamers have put their name to it, and we get a breakdown of the features which we'll cover as we go on the back. So inside the box, as well as the controller, we get a hard case, ideal for taking the controller out on the move. Controller comes boxed in the hard case, which we've taken out just now, and we get pockets here for the bundled extras. Along with the controller we get the various bits of product documentation, a little bag with extra items, and a screwdriver. If we take the extra items out of the little packet, you see there are two little covers here which are used with the screwdriver, we'll look at that later on, and then two rubber covers for the analog sticks for the controller. So as well as those items, with the controller we also get the braided USB cable. Now one end of that has the standard breakaway cable for Xbox 360 and a USB cable, connector there. And at the other end we've got Razer's own connector which screws onto the controller, and we'll look at that in a moment. And then we have the controller itself. So as I say, it comes in the box, separate to the cable, so that when you're travelling, Razer say you don't need to worry about the cable breaking. I'm not sure how many cables break when things are on the move, but not going to be a problem here. So to attach the cable, you just sit it on the end, try and line up the small line on the thing there, and then it screws into place to hold it. And it's actually quite a solid connection, reasonably stable right the way up to about an inch into the cable there, and then there's a short section of cable before there's another solid section there, and it's 10 foot from end to end, so that should fit across most living room areas. Now the controller itself has similar rubber finish to the Onza, and they have made a number of changes though, and we will look at them in a moment. So we now have the Onza, this is the Battlefield 3 edition, alongside the Sabertooth. The Sabertooth, as I mentioned, has a few differences that are noticeable from the Onza just on first glance. One of the more obvious is the new D-pad design. On the Onza it's a much kind of more pronounced circular button here. On the Sabertooth we have each button much more spaced out. It does make moving in kind of circular motion to do kind of your Street Fighter style combos and stuff like that a little bit easier, but I was quite a fan of the more chunky buttons on the Onza. I felt easy to use, but different people have different tastes, and it was something that people complained about on the Onza. Other than that, we have a move. The start buttons were down here on the Onza, they're now back up in the more traditional position on the Sabertooth, which much better place in my opinion. We also have a significant change to the analog sticks on the Onza. You can see it here, there are dials on the sticks, and you can twist them, and what that does is it changes the resistance on the sticks, so you can have them harder to move or easier to move. On the Sabertooth things are handled a lot different. So we can still change the sensitivity, but not the resistance. So the sensitivity is all done electronically within the controller. So using these buttons down here, this one particularly, we go into the menu system, and then we can click the stick, that turns it into a config mode, and then we can move sensitivity from -10 to +10, and that then allows the stick to have more sensitive movement or reduce the sensitivity. And things like driving games you can have where you'd move the stick right across like that and you'd barely get any movement off the wheel at all. And turning the controllers over, very obvious change on the bottom of them here. On the Onza, we had the configuration buttons on the back, which allowed us to remap the controls on the top here. On the Sabertooth, we have two actual rocker switches, rock up and down, actioned by your fingers that are around the back of the controller, and they are mapped basically by using, again, this little OLED screen on the front here. The other thing about these is that they're fully removable. So I'll just, with the bundled screwdriver, take them off. And then if for any reason you felt you didn't like those switches, little rubber covers that just press, are meant to press into place here. Not the best fit in the world, but they do go in, and once they're fully pressed in, actually a little bit difficult to come out, which I guess could be a good thing for when you have them on the move. The one thing I would say is that for my own use, I felt they were really, there was no reason to remove the buttons, because when you actually have them in place, they don't actually cause any problems if you don't use them, because the way that your fingers sit on the controller, they're nowhere near accidentally pressing them, and you can have the buttons set to have no function at all, so that when you're to press them, it wouldn't do anything in game. So even if you accidentally press something, you wouldn't, for example, kick or jump or anything like that. So it seems a strange move to have them removable, so that, you know, they're only going to get lost, and then you have to contact Razer to get new buttons. The other significant change from the Onza, and from obviously the standard Xbox controller, which I'll just bring in here as well, is that the shoulders of the controller are significantly different in terms of button layout. This is the standard Xbox controller, so you have your shoulder buttons and the two triggers. The Onza, we had two sets of shoulder buttons and then some triggers which were actually quite long. They had a long arm on them. And now on the Sabertooth, we've gone with the kind of standard shoulder buttons, two smaller triggers here, and they do feel quite small when you're using them. And then the two extra shoulder buttons have moved in towards the centre, so that you'd normally sit like that. You just reach in slightly and tap those buttons there, and then obviously you have your trigger action here. The buttons on the front are LED backlit, and they're called hyper response buttons. That was similar on the Onza. If you're looking for a kind of comparison button, they are very similar to what you would find on a Razer mouse or something like that, whereas these feel like much more like switches up the top here. Those ones as well. And then the back buttons are quite more like the hyper response ones on the front, with the kind of almost immediate action and very short kind of travel length, but not hyper response. And looking at the sticks, I've got one of the covers on the controller here. They just kind of go on, and you wrap them around the top of the sticks there, and they provide that little bit extra grip to the controller. It's actually noticeable when you're using it how much extra grip it does give, because these offer a decent bit of grip. The standard heads, the green, Razer green I guess, covers lots of extra grip, especially seeing as they're textured rubber as well. So we've got the lights down now just so you can see the LED lighting on the controller. As is normal with an Xbox controller, we've got the ring round the X button and lets you know which player you are and whether the controller is connected or not. You can see here the backlit hyper response buttons, and then down the front here we've got the little OLED display. If you hit the button at the left hand side of it, it allows you to switch between profile 1 and 2 quickly, and if you hit the button on the opposite side, we go into program mode. Now program mode using the D-pad, we just go to where we want to be in the menu. So we can change the backlight to on-off, turn the rumble settings, there's a test mode, and when in program mode, if we do something like press the left stick, it gives us the analog stick sensitivity, so it's up at 10 at the moment, and we just tap the D-pad to go back down through the settings, all the way down to -10, and then we can tap the up button to go back. If we want to configure any other option, we just hit the left stick again to come out of the thing, and then we can press buttons on the controller to see what our user configurable buttons are set to. So pressing one of the bottom buttons just now, we can see that M6 is set to be one of the front buttons here. And then if we were to look at one that's disabled, can press it and then just hit B like that to set it to B. Another disabled one, hit X, immediately sets it to X. So that's our two shoulder buttons set to B and X. So going over the main features of the Sabertooth again, changes since the Onza were obviously the more traditional style analog sticks without the twistable resistance setting on them. I personally really liked the resistance feature on the Onza and would have liked to have seen it here. I guess Razer removed it because it was maybe causing reliability issues or something along those lines, but improving the reliability and keeping the feature would have been my preference. The onboard sensitivity changes using the profile and settings buttons down here. There is a wide range of sensitivity available, and it does really make a difference in game when you move it from -10 to +10. However, just having that extra resistance, actually, the feel of the controller is a lot better on the Onza when you're got the resistance up or down. It just gives you that little bit of extra tactile feel to do those kind of movements that require fine movement, or maybe a game where you feel resistance is needs to be a little bit higher. It was always good to have that. The D-pad for some will be improved. It's much more like a PlayStation style D-pad now, and it does make a difference for some games. I quite liked the kind of clunky D-pad that was on the Onza. There was very specific big chunky buttons on it, and for some games that suits. Everyone's going to have different tastes though, and there's no significant complaints about the D-pad on the PlayStation, and I would imagine that a lot of people like to see the kind of PlayStation style D-pad here. The little removable covers, nice little touch. They do add that extra bit of grip, I guess, in long gaming sessions, or if you have particularly sweaty hands, then they're going to be good for you. Hyper response buttons have always been great on the Razer Xbox controllers. They're the same here. The backlighting is nice, which helps if you're gaming in the dark. Very much like the move of bringing the start and back buttons up to the top here. Just much more natural, and it was always easier on the Xbox standard controller to hit these. On the Onza you had to kind of jump down here to hit start and things like that. It didn't make much sense, so having the backup here is great. The menu system is very easy to use. It's a nice addition. Just hit that to change the profiles quickly, so you could have sensitivity -10 on profile 1, tap it to profile 2 and you're immediately up to +10, and that means that if you've got a game that requires two different types of control, maybe a sniper rifle and just a standard handgun or something like that, you've got the sensitivity changes there quite quickly. You can reset them really quickly if you had to as well. You just hold down the button for 2 seconds and confirm the reset prompt. Going into the menus is quick. You've got the kind of the profile mode and everything in there. Going back to the top of the controller, quite a nice change to the top here, having there's a little bit just more room overall around here because we've not got a full-sized button in there. It makes a little bit more sense, and it's quite easy to jump just from there to there with minimum movement of your whole hand. Not a fan of the new trigger buttons. Not that they're hard to use, they're quite a good amount of resistance in there, there's a decent amount of travel, they're just not quite long enough, or maybe not quite curved enough would be the right way to put it. With all the other buttons that are going on there, they've had to reduce the size of them, I feel, or not maximise the size of them. Still got the headphone connector here, which is fine. I'm sure Razer would want you to use one of their own headsets in there, but the standard Xbox ones should be fine. Rubberized surface all over, and then of course we've got those back buttons. Still thinking that the removable feature of them is a bit pointless. They're going to get lost. If you don't want to use them, you can not map them. You can easily unmap them if you've got, say, the two profiles on there. And you can have one set with buttons mapped and one not, so that when you're holding it you don't accidentally press a button, but that's unlikely to happen anyway, because when you're holding it you can just have it clutched onto there and it's not really a big problem. Just a decent, very good, solid controller overall. It's very easy to navigate around all the different features on there, turning everything on and off, and it feels good to game with, which is the most important point. Although they don't have the variable resistance on the sticks, they're nice, sensitive, a good level of resistance on there anyway. And the hyper response buttons, always great. And very easy to use the controller overall. So yeah, good controller from Razer. Overall probably better than the Onza, other than the minor issue of those of us who love the variable resistance on the analog sticks. Just one final note before we finish up on the Sabertooth. Would be great if it was wireless. It's in the documentation from Razer, and I'm sure it was the same on the Onza, that it's all about latency and lag and everything, why these are wired controllers. That might be an issue with the wireless controller on the Xbox, where that wireless technology isn't as up to date as some other stuff. But on the PC, if you're a PC gamer and you can't plug this into PC, it would be good if you had a wireless option for PC users, and in addition to that had software from Razer to map the buttons to any key on your keyboard and just give you that extra functionality if you're a PC user. You still get all the standard buttons work on the PC. You can still map them in controller just as you can on the Xbox, but having it wireless and having it more configurable would be something that would add that little bit extra, and maybe there's a PC version needed. But if we can have no lag, good latency wireless mice from Razer, then I'm sure that they can work on no lag, good latency controllers for PC as well. So it would be a nice to have. Doesn't impact the Xbox 360 side of things, and it is still a very good controller. But having that little bit extra for PC users would be a great feature, in addition to all the extra stuff that the Sabertooth already has.